Drop it.
Hello, and welcome to Be Real, the Maryland real estate podcast. I'm Brad Cox with the Vesta Group of Long and Foster, and I am joined by the ever urbane.
Good one.
Yeah, thanks.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
I'm blushing. And I am Michael Becker of Sierra Pacific Mortgage.
Great to see you, Michael.
Great to see you.
So listen, I'm taking a second right up at the top of the show
Okay.
because I have a little announcement to make. Rachel and I have talked a lot about things, and I think I'm going to have to get out of real estate. So
Shut the hell up.
April Fools.
Yeah, there you go.
We're
Good
recording
one.
on April 1st.
Fools. You know, woke up this morning and thought, I didn't have time to pull one on Mindy.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to think about it.
I'm sure my son will have some. He's devious like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll call her. I'll go home and tell her that our guests for dinner are coming over tonight. They just texted me.
Right. Yeah. Mess with her a little bit.
She'd be like, she's such a homebody. She'd be like, oh, cool. It is April Fool's. You know what I noticed? Because it is beginning of April.
Yeah.
I drive along Green Spring Valley Road on the way to come in here and record this in my office. Mm-hmm. How green the grass was getting.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't, you know how in the spring there's pockets that grow super long and the rest of the lawn hasn't caught up yet?
Yes, that's what we have right now on our front lawn.
I pulled out the weed whacker and trimmed those little spots.
Yeah, I have a guy, so. He just hasn't been by yet.
Yeah. Well, I did. I have the prettiest flower beds in the neighborhood because
Very nice.
I had somebody come out, mulch them, and
I got a guy for that too.
I do too.
Yeah.
Very good guy.
And in this case, they are both guys.
Yeah.
Not that I.
Javier is my guy.
Yeah.
He's your
My
JP
guy's-
Landscaping.
Yeah. Erlin is my landscaping guy, but Jeff is my lawn care guy.
Oh, yeah.
One sec.
Shut up, Siri.
Okay. What do you have playing
I
there?
don't know what the heck that was.
Okay.
Siri was
All right.
playing some music called Maps. What is that?
I don't know.
Siri's got a mind of her own.
Same thing happens with my Apple Watch all the
I know
time.
we should take
Yeah.
it off because sometimes you raise it.
Yep. I'm actually taking it off right now. But anyway, all right. So, Michael,
Yes, sir.
one of our goals this week, we're going to try to get under
Let's do it.
60 minutes.
We have some good information.
We do have great information.
If we don't
yeah. We're trying.
rattle on like we tend to do.
We always do. Yes. So, we're going to jump right in
Yeah.
to the rundown. So, you've got some great mortgage information.
Every single week I bring in the mortgage application data, talk about interest rates, and then mention my prediction for the coming week on interest rates. So
Great.
for the fourth week in a row, mortgage applications increased 2.9% from 1 week earlier. I went back and looked for last time we had a decrease was the 1st of March, and that was probably it was still kind of winter then. It was after we saw the most recent lows in mortgage rates was February 2nd.
Yeah.
And then pretty much the rest of the month of February rates rose, right?
Yeah.
But recently, I think the increase is twofold. One, it's time for mortgage applications to increase. Even though this data is seasonally adjusted, you do tend to get more purchase applications.
in the spring, yeah.
I think it's also being pushed by refinance activity, and I've speculated in the previous weeks. We've had a little bit of rally because of the bank failure concerns. Earlier this week, we saw rates spike because that kind of conceded, but into the end of the week, rates kind of rallied. The data from the Mortgage Bankers Association is a little over a week old when we record this. It's from the week ending March 24th, but that was the height of the banking crisis. They said the fixed rate was 6.45% for the week on a 30-year. That's a conventional 30-year fix. FHA tends to be a little bit lower. But I think part of the increase is due to some refinance activity. In fact, refinances were up 5% from the previous week. And my speculation is that in the fall, and there's certain pockets when people were buying where rates were higher. In October, we saw average rate, I think it was 7.375, hit the high in early October. People buying around then may have gotten rates in the low sevens, and believe it or not, 6 months later, a drop of 1% might make sense to do a refinance. They could obviously wait and see if they drop further, but I've always been a fan, if it makes sense, no one knows the future whether rates are going to go up or down.
May as well take the opportunity.
Yes, and if they drop drastically a good bit from here again, you could look at refinancing once again. Of course, it depends on every situation. If you have a $100,000 loan, maybe dropping 1% doesn't make sense.
Right.
But if you have a $400,000 loan, dropping 1% does
makes a big impact.
Makes a big impact. As I said, rates, the Mortgage Bankers Association said it was 6.45. You and I like to look at Mortgage News Daily because they change it daily. Mm-hmm. Hence the daily part.
Hence.
Their average rate for high-quality borrowers was at 6.57 a weekend. It started the week at 6.3738, something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of went up in the middle of the week.
Went up to about 6.7,
something like that. And it rallied in the week.
Yeah.
It was an incredibly boring week when it comes to bond trading, which the bonds that go into calculating mortgage rates, because there wasn't a lot of activity. Banks' failures kind of subsided, and a lot of the Fed and economic news was big economic news was behind us.
Right.
Friday, we saw a little bit of a rally. It's because there was an inflation report. It's the personal consumption expenditure. Specifically, the core PCE is the Fed's preferred rate of inflation. It was expected on a monthly basis to increase from 0.4 to 0.5, but it actually decreased to 0.3, and the year-over-year number was 4.6. That was the decline of the previous month, a slight decline, but markets took that as a good sign, and they rallied on Friday.
Right.
I think we're probably going to be in a flat until we come up with the next big data point, because the Fed's saying they're data dependent. We're probably going to be flat going into the next week, and next Friday is the March payrolls report. That could move markets.
Yeah.
311,000 jobs were created last month, but we didn't see it, which was more than expected. But rates didn't skyrocket off of that because there were other parts of that report that weren't so strong, i.e. hourly earnings, weekly earnings, and the unemployment rate actually increased because that's done from a separate survey. Well, we'll talk about next Saturday. We'll talk about the jobs report and do it. But I think over the next week we'll probably see flat rates, right in the mid-sixes.
Sure.
For 30-year fixes.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael. All right, so we're going to roll into the real estate market. The active listings. It's been this is a weird week. And I started talking to Michael a little bit about this earlier, so I'll explain why in a minute. So active listings went up again, so that's great. We're starting to see more listings hit the market as we normally do during this time of year. So we went from 329 last week to 351 this week. That's an increase of 6.69%. Pending sales were pretty flat. That was, in fact, 0.14% up from 735 to 736. So very flat. The settled sales went from 453 to 545. That's 20.31% up.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So we had a bunch of properties settled.
Good.
Now here's the one that was a little weird. So the off-market properties, whatever they went off for, whether it was temporarily off or expired or withdrawn or canceled, went from 252 last week to 408 this week, an increase of almost 62%.
Wow.
Now, I looked. Of those 408, 232 were expired listings. So here's what's interesting to me about that.
Yeah, why so many expired listings?
Well, and you'd think about it, in a market like this that's so slanted toward the seller, almost every home's selling.
You would think.
Right. If it goes on the market, pretty good chance it's going to sell. However, and I talked to you about this a little earlier. This guy, Lance Lambert, who we look at some of the things he writes about on Fortune magazine, and he posts a lot about market data. He keeps talking about this bifurcated market. That's the West Coast versus the East Coast. What's happening out west is not what's happening out here. A lot of declines out west. Over on the East Coast, we're doing just fine. But I'm also suggesting there's this bifurcated, more so than there has been previously, bifurcated HGTV versus not.
Yes,
homes.
The homes that are turnkey ready, that are ready to move in, that very little has to be done. They've been entirely updated, either by the owner-occupant or if it was a flip, an investor bought it and plans on fixing up and flipping it.
Yep. So those homes are going very quickly. Other homes, not so much. And
Those
so
diamonds in the rough are sitting, huh?
they tend to be sitting. So
Interesting. That might present an opportunity for potential buyers out there to keep getting priced out.
So this is the point. So advice to sellers: if you want your home to sell, you need to spend some time making your home ready for the sale. Don't have Michael and I regularly look at these bad MLS photos where people leave laundry out and dishes in the sink and things are just scattered all over the house. Don't list your house if that's what
they ought to be connecting with a mortgage guy and figure out how to list the property as a rehab project. If there's a good bit of equity in the home, sellers don't want to fix it up,
then
market it as such.
Sure. Absolutely. But then price it right for that market. Yeah. So that's the thing that I would say take away for sellers is sellers either price it right for the condition or spend some time and money to make it shine.
Right.
Now, on the buyer side, that advice is there can be opportunities, to your point, Michael, to look for those diamonds in the rough and find something that maybe needs a little bit of elbow grease, but is otherwise structurally sound and not falling down around you, but maybe needs a little bit of love. That can be an opportunity for you because they're not going as quickly.
There are rehab loans that can be simple as cosmetic improvements.
Sure.
And then there's ones that are more complicated that you can actually do structural changes, additions, things like that.
Yeah. That should be an episode.
Well,
and it will be.
It's going to be an episode. I think after we do next week's episode, we'll have to do
we have those.
The rehab loans.
They're in the pipeline.
Well, we can move that around.
Yeah. Anyway,
just because I think we should be pivoting to the market conditions out there.
That's true.
If there's a bifurcated market, then every buyer you have is getting. If a first-time home buyer has a hard time competing because there's multiple offers on those turnkey properties,
and that's what happens. Think about the renovation loans.
100%.
And there are conventional loan products that have that. There's FHA loan products that have that. So you have options available to you. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to get back to some of the stats. Average days on the market dropping. Went from 38 to 30, so almost 20% down.
That's probably due to the quality of the homes that were listed.
Could be.
Because like you said, the bifurcated market, the nicer homes sell when they go on. If they're list Thursday, you have to have all offers in by Sunday still.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. All right. So settled went up by 20%. So the total volume that's up 22% from 181 million to 221 million. We had number of concessions increased correspondingly, not quite as many, 5.92% from 169 to 179. So the percentage of homes getting concessions dropped a little bit from 37.31 to 32.84. It's almost 12%.
What homes, since we're talking about a bifurcated market, what homes are getting seller concessions in your opinion?
It's across the board.
Is
honestly.
It really? Even the nice ones?
Well, because, and I think this is what happens. Is
post-contract.
Post-contract, you're getting some, absolutely.
As opposed to negotiating that when you're going under contract of getting some seller help. You often will accept one with no seller help, but then after the home inspection, something needs to be repaired. The seller doesn't necessarily want to spend the money to repair it.
So you get it correct.
They give you the money to fix it.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to get an offer accepted that requires seller help right now.
Yeah, unless it's one of those.
Unless it's one of those diamonds in the rough. Mm-hmm. All right, so the average concessions dropped a little bit from 75.33 to 70.37. It's down 6.59%. And the average list to sales price ratio went from 104.29 to 103.8, including the auctions. But if you drop them out, we went from 98.13 to 99.42. And then we talked in the past 2 weeks about some drops in the median sale price. We saw 2 consecutive drops, about 1.5 the first time, and then almost 5% the second week. This week, we're up 6.6% from 326 to 347.5. So back to where we were.
Yeah.
So
that a week-to-week drop in a local market,
it's not
median
a trend.
Sales average is not indicative of. You have to go out longer term and see what it is, and maybe even average those numbers. Brad and I have consistently said we don't see price. I mean, if you were to listen to this Case-Shiller index was come out, the top 20 all saw also drops
Yeah.
in median sales price. People were saying,
Right.
and like you said, the West Coast seems to have, they do have significant drops in sales price, 5 to 8%. But we're not seeing it here on the East Coast.
No.
There's just not enough inventory, and there's too many people who want to buy homes for a significant drop in sales price to occur.
Yep. All right, so Michael,
Yes, sir.
great information. Thank you for sharing. When we come back, we're going to get into home buying mistakes, the top 10 buyer blunders.
I like the alliteration.
All right, so we'll be back in just a bit.
Try it.
And we're back to Be Real, the Maryland real estate podcast. I'm Brad Cox with the Vesta Group of Long and Foster, joined by the perfectly polymathic.
Ooh, that's an SAT word. Polymathic?
Yes.
I'm going to look that up. I mean, I know poly's multiple.
Multiple. Yeah, a polymath, like an expert in multiple topics.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm an expert on nothing, but I know that's not true. Is it better to be an expert on one thing or to be well-read and know a lot about or a little bit about a lot of topics?
That's the eternal debate.
It is a debate.
Yeah. All right, Michael, so rolling right in, we're talking about home buying mistakes.
Buyer blunders. Now, let's fix this.
Say
Michael.
it 3 times fast.
Buyer blunders. 5 times.
Right. The top 10
Mistakes.
buyer blunders.
Top 10 mistakes.
Yes.
I think I could go to like 25, but let's
You
keep it
probably
at 10.
could. 10 as well. You know what? We might have a spinal tap moment.
A supplement. Let's turn it to 11.
That's right. But these are the things that we're trying to help people avoid doing because we see them happen time and time again.
Well, it's such a big deal, and there's so much involved with it, especially for the first-time home buyer. It can be overwhelming.
Sure. People don't know what they don't know.
And I've even seen seasoned buyers make some of these mistakes.
Sure.
So.
Well, you think about it, a seasoned buyer. Even a seasoned buyer is going to, how many properties are they going to buy and sell in a lifetime? Right. Versus we sell 50, 60, a year. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more common for us to.
Yeah, I get it.
So we see a little bit more. These are the things that we see some buyers doing that could be avoided, could save you some heartburn.
These aren't in any particular order.
No.
It's not like the biggest mistake to the least big mistake.
Right.
They're all mistakes that should be categorized as blunders because they're avoidable.
They are entirely avoidable. All right, so let's get into it. The first one, not considering the full cost of home ownership.
Well, there's 2 aspects to it. There's the monthly payment or the budget, right?
Yep.
And then there's the after you closed cost of owning a home.
Right, and people forget about that sometimes.
So let's talk about one. The first one is the monthly thing. You're right.
Yeah.
What I despise, they are helpful, but I do despise people going to like Zillow and calculating.
They see that mortgage payment and they only do PI, not PITI.
Right.
People
or they'll
forget.
see it'll have a 20% down payment calculated in it and a ridiculously low rate.
Yes.
That only people with a direct line to God can qualify for.
Right.
Right. They use a very low rate, 20% down. They may not calculate the homeowners association fee. There's many things that are missing in that monthly calculation. So that's why when you're, when I start the process with somebody pre-approving them, I don't ask them what dollar amount home they want. I ask them what kind of payment they want. And then I back into that based on the rates and where they're looking. In Baltimore County, more than other counties out there can be a huge variation in the property taxes for similarly priced homes. Sure. The water distribution and sewer service. I recently pulled up a property tax bill in Baltimore County. The sewer service portion of it, $2,000.
Wow. I think there's something seriously wrong there.
The sellers probably had 3 leaky toilets in that or something like that.
There's
ran
definitely something going on there.
Where other counties, they don't have those charges and you don't see it. You get a sense. I kind of try to come up with an average property tax. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. Sure. But you can get an idea of the price point. But you must calculate principal and interest, taxes, insurance, Mortgage insurance, if you're putting less than 30% down,
Right.
or if you're using an FHA loan or a USDA loan, which they call it a guarantee fee,
Right.
monthly part of it,
Right.
and then finally homeowners association fees. Those things all go into what you have to pay, and they also go into your qualification.
It's very true. You know what else I'm seeing a lot recently is people underestimating the amount that the insurance is going to cost for the property insurance, the hazard insurance. We're seeing that time and time again because the insurance industry has seen a pretty significant tick up in rates.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
I
our
think
buddy
it's going to
Jeff-
calm down a little bit. I think a big part of that was the cost to rebuild was so expensive because of lumber and the supply chain shutdowns. Things that went into fixing a house were so much more expensive than the insurance companies had priced their policies on.
Sure.
So you're right. Not only that, there are people in my business, a national builder who has their own mortgage company, who shall remain nameless for this podcast, was giving numbers to a potential client of mine. They may use the in-house lender because sometimes builders offer so much it's hard to compete.
Sure.
Like $20,000 in incentives. The rate they're going to get is not going to be great. But anyway, let's not talk about that. What bothered me most, it was over $700,000 purchase. Do you know what they had penciled in for the monthly homeowners insurance?
I can't imagine.
$50.
What?
$600 a year.
What?
Yeah, that ain't happening.
No, not even close.
I mean, it's probably going to be closer to. It is a new house, so maybe the insurance is a little less with a new
but
house.
for a $700,000 house, it's
$1,500, I would have guessed.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I wouldn't have had an issue if you say $100 a month and it's $1,200 a year, and then it ends up being $120 or $30. That's not terribly off.
Right, but
$50,
that's a big difference.
Guess what? If you approve somebody based on a debt to income ratio there like that, and they're that close, you're in trouble.
You can't qualify now.
They can't qualify now.
Huh.
That's when I swoop in and save the day.
Absolutely. Well,
So
there you
anyway,
go. Yeah.
so people need to figure that out.
Yes.
And then first-time home buyers especially, you were talking about after they buy a house.
Yeah, yeah. The things that they don't necessarily plan for, but that happen, like the maintenance costs. And we talked about this in another
I have
property.
a good number that you like.
Yeah, love this number that you've been talking about this for quite a while now. Saving about 1% of the purchase price of the home per year toward any kind of home
maintenance and
maintenance.
repairs.
Yeah.
When you buy a house, especially if it's one of those turnkey properties, you might have to go a few years without having to really put almost not anything into the house.
Sure.
But if you need a new roof, a new HVAC, that might be 2% of the value of the home.
Sure.
So if you've had that saving, it's better to own a home and have a little bit of savings should you need a major repair.
Sure.
Anyway, so it's important to calculate everything in your monthly payment and then post-closing maintenance costs.
Here's another one that's kind of surprising for some people when they're for move-up buyers, and we don't have too many of them right now in the market because it's a discretionary sometimes move, but move-up buyers they're used to paying a certain amount for their utilities, and then they're going to go buy the bigger house.
Think about that.
Yeah.
What
that
if
could
you
be
have a
big
1
jump.
acre lawn? Do you think that push mower is going to do it?
Nope.
You might need a tractor.
You might need a tractor. Yeah, sure.
Think about that.
Yeah, so all sorts of different things that you've got to factor in. So not considering the full cost. Point number one. All right.
Point number two, something near and dear to my heart.
This is so common. We get buyers who will call us and say, hey, I want to go see this house. Well, we don't know whether that buyer is able to buy that house. And it is irresponsible for those in the real estate industry to just show homes willy-nilly to any buyer out there for any number of reasons. But point number two, failing to get a pre-approval for a mortgage.
Right.
Yeah. So
there's several reasons to do a pre-approval process. It's not only your income and assets to qualify for it. It's looking if there's any mistakes in your credit, any hiccups on your assets that may be an issue.
Yep.
People, how about this situation, Brad? A young couple's going to buy a house. They're domestic partners but never been married.
Yeah.
And one of those domestic partners is going on the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
The other isn't. The one who isn't going on the mortgage is going to get a gift from their parent to help buy that house. That presents issues.
Right.
Thinking that you're okay,
Yeah.
that it's going to work out.
Right. without talking to a professional to understand what the rules are.
And they've changed them recently. Domestic partners become, it used to be gifts had to come from family by blood or marriage.
Yeah.
Domestic partners have been, but not on all loans.
Right.
But they have been recognized. So it's something you can do. And then the whole gift process is an issue too. Sometimes parents do not like giving, if they're not going on the mortgage or just making a gift, they do not want to, they want to share as little financial data as they can
Right.
for their kids to get approved.
Right.
Well, depending on the loan that the kids use and where the gift is made, I may or may not need an asset or bank statement from those parents.
Right.
And when the parent, and many times when I get that asset statement, Brad,
Yeah.
it's got blacked out data because they don't want their, well, I can't use that. So,
Right.
Anyway, those are little things just throughout the process. I mean, if you've been pre-approved, if I've seen your assets, I've reviewed the whole statement, seen the deposits, had anything that an underwriter might question, it's going to go smoother. You can, these days, also electronically verify your deposits, and I don't need statements. We have a company called Finicity that I can send an email to, and I can electronically verify it, much like I can electronically verify a lot of your employment and income if your employer reports their data to what's called the work number.
Yeah.
So doing that ahead of time in your pre-approval process not only is smart to see if you qualify, when comes time to make an offer, if you've been electronically verified, you're pretty much done for an appraisal and title work.
Yeah. Which makes a big difference.
You can say, well, if somebody wanted a 14 or 15-day close, and we can do that now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So-
absolutely. Well,
so
and it makes the offer that much stronger
Makes it
because
stronger.
there's people don't understand the difference between an initial, here's your pre-qualification.
I could sit here and talk for
Here's
hours
your-
about
yeah.
reasons you got to get pre-approved, but
Right.
giving a few of those examples just kind of lets people know.
Well, and here's
how
the
important
other
it
one
is.
on the real estate side. Just thinking about the buyers themselves. You may think that you qualify for that home, but let's say for whatever reason, for any and the number of reasons that Michael just mentioned or others, you don't qualify for it. Well, then you're starting to see homes that you're not going to be able to afford.
It's so hard to go back.
It creates this expectation in your mind, and then no matter what happens, you're disappointed.
Right.
And so, so there are plenty of reasons to be pre-approved. The other one, by the way, if you're going to write an offer in this market, sometimes you need to be ready to go
that
right
day.
away.
Yeah.
Right away. So if you take the time after you see the home to then go talk to a lender, well, you may not be able to
I've
get
had
it
in the
in
past
time.
calls while I'm at dinner.
Yeah.
On a Saturday night, calls from an agent
Yeah.
who needs to pre-approve because they got to submit an offer.
Yeah.
They found a house they like and they want to submit an offer, and I've got to pull credit, get asset data.
Never spoken to them
run
before.
automated underwriting, do everything I can to write a legitimate pre-approval that's solid so the offer is accepted.
It's an irresponsible agent.
I will do that. I was going to say happily. I'm not so sure if I have to. I can remember having to leave. Hey guys, we were on dessert. I said I got to go up. I'll meet you later at the hotel bar, right? Because we were on vacation with a couple of friends. Got a call when I had my laptop. Went up to the room, called the guy, got all the information. He was able to. I did it all, but it took an hour out on a Saturday night. But guess what? It could have been done Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Or Saturday
absolutely.
morning before I was at
Absolutely.
dinner.
Right. Don't create. It's the phrase. Your lack of preparation on your part does not create an emergency on my part, right?
So number 2 is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah,
not,
failing to
not
get
being
the
pre-approved,
pre-approved.
but I think 3 is something pretty important.
Well, so it may seem a little self-serving for me to read this, but it's about not working with a real estate agent, and here's
You're talking
why.
on the buyer side. I mean, there's
It
people who
is.
think, I'll save the commission and do a FSBO, for sale by owner,
Yeah,
property, but this is buyers.
yeah. This is buyers, right?
How much? They don't spend a lot of money. I mean, they pay a
They
flat
pay
realtor fee. The
typically
seller
a flat
pays
fee.
your commission.
Well, usually
you're
it's
right.
it's negotiable, but here's the big thing: going straight to the listing agent to buy that home. Who does that listing agent represent?
Well, oh yeah.
They represent the seller. They have a fiduciary responsibility to represent the seller's best interest.
Dual agencies,
not
it
yours.
can be done, but it is tough to represent both parties. You have to represent the seller in that case.
They have to represent the seller, right? You can be an unrepresented buyer, but then you're not getting any representation. You have to figure everything out on your own.
Yeah, you have to deal with home inspection.
Right. And do you understand all of those things? And yes, that real estate agent on the seller side may explain some things to you. They have a duty to explain things, but they can't advise you at all. So yeah, it can be a really big challenge for a buyer to go that route alone. So don't think that you're saving anybody any money. And oh, by the way, that listing agent who you think by going direct you're going to save that seller money and maybe it'll result in a lower offer for you. Yeah, usually not.
They're going to
get a higher commission.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I always said it's pretty hard to be a dual. I mean, in fact, don't you have disclosures?
You do.
Special disclosures for dual agency?
Consent for dual agency. You have to sign that you agree to the concept of dual agency in general when you're a buyer. And then if you write an offer on a house that has dual agency, then you have to follow up with the acknowledgement that, yes, for this particular property, we know we're in dual agency and we're okay with that.
Why do you think that comes up? Because the internet has so much data on it, and you can start searching for homes before you even speak to a realtor, and then you see a home and you might just call because the listing agent number is there on Zillow, Redfin.
Sometimes it's the
Realtor.com,
listing agent.
Trulia.
Sometimes it's just some person who gets
the call.
assigned the lead.
Oh yeah.
When you say, hey, I'm interested in this home. Yeah, so you never know what you're going to get. Here's the thing: talk to some.
No, I'm talking about the listing agent's data is right there.
It usually is, but if they click on that, I'm interested in this home, doesn't necessarily go to the listing agent.
No, I meant call the number that's there that they have a cell phone number. You're right, exactly right. If I'm interested in this house, it goes to somebody who's bought a lead from one of these internet companies.
Yeah, so talk to somebody you trust that recently bought a home. See what their experience was like. Talk to that person and see who they'd recommend for you as a realtor. But
I would again.
Yeah, have that
Don't
conversation.
go it alone. Don't go it alone. Have somebody representing you in the purchase of a home. Yeah. Always.
It's such a big purchase. So anyway,
biggest one in most people's lives.
Yeah. All right. Item number 4, rushing the home search, which in this market, there's a lot of people who, that's one of the regrets that we're seeing a lot of people say they have in the home buying process.
That they felt rushed.
They went too quickly. They felt rushed. They felt pressured by someone.
Well, it's easy to rush into something, especially in this market when you enter it, you're looking at homes, your first 2 offers get beat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're thinking, I got to act quickly and be a little nimble here, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
You have to respond quickly, but here's why a little preparation is very beneficial. Take some time when you're thinking about buying a home and start driving neighborhoods, even before you've talked to anyone, before you've talked to a realtor, before you've talked to a lender. Just start driving neighborhoods. See where you like. See what kinds of things you like. Maybe start going to a few open houses here and there. Start to get a feel for the type of home you like. You can eliminate a bunch of homes from your search. You can narrow your search. You can be more efficient as a buyer, and you don't have to feel as rushed because you've taken those preliminary steps. And then when you find the one that you like after you've worked with your realtor and you've gotten pre-approved, then when you find the home that you've liked, you felt like you've seen more. You've done a little bit more research.
When you're moving into a neighborhood that you're not familiar with, something different, or you're considering that at least, it's not a bad idea to see what's close by. Shopping, entertainment, restaurants.
It's all about how do you want to live.
What your commute's going to be like if you do commute these days. That's important to think about. I've been working with a client who bought during the pandemic and bought in White Marsh. Works at Fort Meade. Wasn't a big deal during the pandemic because he could work from home. He's hating that commute now and is looking to buy in northern Anne Arundel County to be closer to Fort Meade.
Yeah, so a little bit of a trek down 95.
Yeah,
it is brutal. That's
so
the point.
Make kind of sense.
Pay attention to what that commute's like if the commute is a factor for you.
There's spots in the Baltimore area that have congestion at given times of the day, and you just got to count on that. And
big spot, all of Baltimore.
Well, there's places
695.
It's not so hard.
Is one big spot.
No, I'm talking like the wicked west side. There always seems to be if you're anywhere from 95 up to 795.
Sure.
Somewhere along that line.
Yeah.
For the last 25 years, There's
Yeah.
been some kind of construction over there.
Same thing
They finally finished it up. It looks great around Route 40, but now a little further down there's construction, and right around 7. It's just never done.
The
It's
same
gonna
thing
be
happens
forever.
in Towson.
Yeah.
And the one in Towson, I never get that one because you're driving along, it's
And then it
3
stops
o'clock,
right before Providence Road.
and then it stops dead, and you're wondering what's going on. Nothing's going on. There's no reason for it. It's just
There's a little more traffic, and then people just are so. I mean, okay, we're getting on a tangent here, but
Yes,
I'm
we
going
are.
to finish it up. I was walking my dog the other day, and a woman with a pretty recent Mercedes is on her phone in her hand, looking at it and talking
my
through it.
gosh.
Why is it not hands-free? There's a thing called Bluetooth that's been around
for
10 or 15 years.
quite a while.
Almost any car, unless if it was built prior to 2010, or if it's built after that, pretty much probably has Bluetooth capability.
Yeah.
You can sync your phone with it, and you don't have to hold it, and you can keep a hand on the steering wheel, and use your turn signal. So
Right. And oh, by the way, it's the law.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, sorry for that. So
No,
not rushing
yep.
the home search is a mistake.
Yep.
Figure out your neighborhood where you want to look. Go to some open houses.
Yep.
Check out the local area.
Yep.
And then maybe.
Yeah.
It's got, especially, this is pretty good advice. What would you, if you're somebody like there's people who move from out of state.
Mm-hmm.
They're relying on us local experts as to what's a good community or not. And
Well, and that's, you can't advise them.
you can advise them, because you might be steering.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And people don't understand that sometimes.
Can you
have to
say
explain that
things
to
like
them.
there's great restaurants?
You can say there's great restaurants. Yes,
Close by.
absolutely. You can't talk about demographic. You can point them to where that data is so that they can do the research on their own.
That's the way to
But
do it.
we
That would make
can't-
sense.
yes,
yeah,
but we
because you don't
can't
want to be seen
advise
steering
them. Yeah.
people into certain neighborhoods.
Oh, I want to be in an area where it's safe. Well, what's safe mean to
That's
you?
a trigger word. Man.
What, right. What does that mean? Right. So we can't do that. We can't have that conversation. But we can say, sure, here's some great restaurants in this area, right? There's a park just down the street. That's all fine. But you can't say this is a good neighborhood. This is a bad neighborhood. You can't make those judgments. Absolutely. All right.
Number
So
5.
yes, take time, do that research, get a feel for what you like, where you want to be, and then we're happy to help you buy a home wherever you want to buy.
Number 4, don't rush the home search. Number
Yes.
5,
Focusing too much on cosmetic issues, right? We talked about this a little earlier. It's the diamond in the rough.
or people just want everything turnkey. But more than that, what I like about this is focusing on that to the exclusion of other things that may be more important.
Right, like the structural mechanics. It's funny when I go show a house and the buyers are all oohing and eyeing over the granite and the beautiful hardwoods and right. Oh, look they have these plugs that have the USB plugs in them, and they focus on all that stuff, and it's cool. It's definitely cool, but I'm in there.
It costs less replacing plugs like that or replacing the HVAC or the roof.
Right. There's a couple things that I think are a little more important. Right. So we're looking. I go through and I look for, and I'm not a home inspector. I'm not going to catch everything that a home inspector is going to catch, but you see enough homes, you start to look for things. It's just about making sure that buyers are aware. So we look through, there's a big crack in the foundation wall there. That could be significant, right? I'm not going to say it's significant. It's not my place to say it's significant, but I'm going to point it out and say that's something we should definitely have looked at, right? If they're interested. We look at the age of the HVAC. We look at the, are the plumbing fixtures.
Those things go back to saving for maintenance. And the newer those things are, the longer the time before they'll have to be replaced or the out-of-pocket maintenance expenses that could be incurred for the home buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So sometimes, the cosmetic features are nice and it's neat it influences how you live in the home and how much you might enjoy living in that home, but they're not the things to focus on too much. You got to focus on the important things.
They are, if people who flip homes are in it to make money, they understand that cosmetic things sell.
Absolutely. That's
And
why
many
they spend the
times
most money on the kitchens and the bathrooms.
And many times those cosmetic repairs may be less than the more important structural or...
Yeah. How many times have you been in a home that's got brand new carpeting over an uneven floor that's got all sorts of problems?
Yes.
Happens all the time. all the time. They didn't fix the underlying issue. They just put carpet over it.
It's a cheaper way to fix it.
Right.
Looks nice.
Well, fix it. Quotes, air quotes, fix it.
Air quotes, fix it, yes.
Yeah. All right. Item number 6, ignoring the potential resale value.
Very, very important.
Yeah.
Especially in this market moving forward.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is last 2 years we've seen, not unprecedented, but pretty big price home appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So those who bought houses in the last 2 years are probably okay if they have to resell it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're not seeing values decline. We probably think there's going to be appreciation, but it's going to be a little slower.
Right.
If your time frame to sell the house after you buy it is 3 to 5 years, you must consider that.
Yeah,
because it does cost money to sell a home, and you don't want to have to come out of pocket to sell a house.
Absolutely. And if you were one of the people who got caught up in the mania of the pandemic era and spent $20, $30, $200, $400,000 over the list,
and now
price,
the values are not only that, they're coming back down.
And the values are starting to come back down. That you might have an issue.
That was the whole reason for the housing bubble and the subprime crisis. So many people, money was flowing so easily, anybody could get a loan. It pushed up the prices.
Right.
There was plenty of home building in those days, tons of it, as a matter of fact, and it pushed up home prices. And then all of a sudden, these loans started readjusting. People couldn't afford them, and with values dropping, they realized, oh, I can't even sell. So all these homes went. People just mailed the keys and just
walked
gave it
away.
up.
Yep.
If you were upside down on a house, why not? In fact, there were people, they came up with steps to prevent this in underwriting. People were buying a home prior to, because they knew their house they were in was upside down. They'd buy a new home and then let that old home go to foreclosure.
Yeah.
Which was a little. But you should, I don't think that's going to happen moving forward. But if you're going to move in 3 years and you only put 3% down, it's going to cost 5 to 7% to sell a house. So not having any appreciation or having a flat, because you're not going to pay the mortgage down a ton in 3 years. You will some.
Right. You could be coming out of pocket.
That might be a tough way to go.
So if you plan to be in the home 7, 10, 15, 20
time
years.
Time does heal those wounds.
Yeah. Typically time does heal those wounds. But if you have to sell in a shorter period of time, you have to be aware of that. So something to think about.
It's smart to think about that. If you're in what could happen potentially is you become, rather than you don't want a house to go to foreclosure and damage your credit, what you might be forced to do is become an unwilling landlord. Rent the house out, have somebody else pay the mortgage for it. And it's a great idea if you think you want to invest in real estate, but being a landlord is not for everyone. I've had some bad tenants, and it is not fun.
Can be a painful experience.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to item number 7. Not having a contingency plan or waiving all your contingencies.
Right. Contingency plan. See, when I first read that line, I was talking about having a backup plan if your first plan, whether it comes to the home you're buying or the financing you're going at.
Which is always a good idea.
That's a great idea. But you're talking about waiving contingencies. We've seen so much of that in the last 2 years.
Right.
I've even waived contingencies.
Well, right.
In the past. Let me put it this way. I had a right to a home inspection and could cancel the deal based on that, but was not going to require the seller of the home to repair it.
Right. But there are buyers out there now who are completely waiving the home inspection. They're completely waiving.
They don't even get one?
Sometimes.
That's
until
insane.
After they've purchased the property and then they realize what they're going to get afterward.
Well,
yeah.
Is it the thought because it's a newer home that maybe it doesn't need any repairs?
Sometimes, maybe, but not always. But they're just trying to compete, and they're saying, we want this home. We don't care. If there's something serious that we have to deal with down the road, we'll deal with it.
Every one of those buyers should be sat in front of a television and forced to watch Tom Hanks.
The Money Pit. Shelley Long?
Shelley Long.
Shelley Long, yeah. Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. Yeah, right? Good
should
point.
Be forced to watch that.
That'd be great homework for them. Just like
it's a gorgeous house on the outside, right?
Was, right, yeah, absolutely. All right, but yes, so be careful.
You don't want your house to become a money pit if you waive your contingencies.
Yeah, so be really careful.
Especially
when you're waiving. Yeah.
Spent a significant amount of your savings
just to be able to purchase the
home.
Yeah.
Having to go into debt to fix some major...
If you can afford it, because you might not be able to get borrow the money.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
So-
there's ways to unsecured
Yeah.
debt that are very expensive that people could go to pay for things, i.e. credit cards, and that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. So the point is, when we're talking about a contingency plan here, it's about waiving your contingencies. You want to have those
Oh,
contingencies.
I always, every time I go into a purchase situation, I have plan A, but in the back of my mind, if something comes up, this is plan B.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. How about number 8, forgetting to budget for closing costs? And we started to talk about this a little bit, but it's, people think, oh, I have my down payment. That's all I need to settle on the home. Correct. But there are closing costs, and they can be substantial, and they can be a higher percentage of the purchase price of the home, depending on where that purchase price is.
They quite often are on those low down payment loans, 3% with conventional. 0% obviously is going to be better. We mentioned VA and USDA last week, and then FHA with 3.5%.
Yep.
I would say, I give people a rough. If people are just wanting information, I always tell them, to get a very accurate number of what your closing costs are going to be, I need the address where I can look up the property tax, know which county it is, know which the government recordation and transfer tax are going to be, whether you're a first-time home buyer or not. Because first-time home buyers in the state of Maryland don't pay a state transfer tax.
Right.
Saves them a little bit of money there.
0.25%.
0.25%.
Yeah.
But I would say on a median house, a rough estimate, and I'll go through what I say are closing costs. To close on a median price house is probably around 4% in the Baltimore metro area. In the city, it might be closer to 5% because those recordation transfer taxes are higher, as are property taxes.
Yes.
So when we calculate closing costs, we're looking about lender fees. Lenders have a few fees. Title company has fees between their abstract search, the title examination, owners and lenders title coverage.
And then there's all the government fees.
You got government fees, and then you have the appraisal. This is going in to get the loan, and get the appraisal is part of it. And then on top of that, there are the prepaids. There's 2 aspects to that. There's the setting up of an escrow to pay your taxes and insurance moving forward. Right. Generally collect a year of insurance up front, and then there's a 2-month cushion. So in case your insurance goes up next year, there's more than enough money. Do it. Same thing with property taxes. You have to have enough in your escrow account with a 2-month cushion to pay that next property tax bill, which tend to be semi-annual in the Baltimore area. Yep. In addition to that, you also have to reimburse the seller for taxes they've paid. If you close on March 31st,
and they've paid up through July,
that's 3 months that you have to reimburse them. In total, it's about 14 months of taxes and about 9 to 10 months, depending on the time of year, for property taxes. All those things add up to the closing costs, and they can get close on a median home. That's going to be about 4%. Sure. But on top of that, the 3%, 3.5% down, and 3.5% to 4% closing costs. There are a few other fees. There's things that you want to check to make sure they're getting a quality home, like the home inspection fee and other tests.
Absolutely. And those are.
What do you tell people buying a house? I guess it depends on the size of the house, what the inspection is going to be, and then if you're going to get insect, termite, and radon tests.
Right. So it depends on where they are. There's 3 home inspections that I would have regardless of the home. That's the structural mechanical inspection that, again, is going to vary based on the size of the home, but say it's a ballpark of about $500. Then there's the wood destroying insect inspection. That's for termites, but not just termites, carpenter bees, carpenter ants, all that stuff. Any wood destroying insect. That's pretty cheap inspection. It's about $75, $80. Okay. Yeah, and then the other one that I would recommend is the radon inspection. Colorless, odorless gas, but has been linked in higher concentrations to certain types of cancer. And it is that one, can typically cost about $150 for that inspection. So, all in you're at about $800 there. But if you have a chimney, add a chimney inspection. If you have a pool,
are they building chimneys?
Sure.
Still with new houses?
Sure.
I mean, nowadays you can get...
Fireplace is still a desirable
nice.
item.
Well, I'm thinking about global warming and how it adds more CO2.
Yeah.
A natural gas fireplace that doesn't,
right,
is probably more, or has less of a carbon footprint.
Well, maybe, but that may become an issue because there are
now
bills out there
natural
now.
gas in the house.
Well, there are bills out there now that they're seeking to eliminate any natural gas in the home for any new construction. So
even to heat.
Yeah. Well, heat pumps have gotten a lot more efficient
Have
over
they?
the past couple of years. So
Well, it
people were
depends
always
on where
worried
you
about-
are, but a heat pump is not going to work in northern Minnesota, is
Not
it?
northern Minnesota, probably not. You need some kind of supplemental something. But, in this area where...
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got on a tangent
Well, but
there.
yeah,
We got on a tangent, but yes, you should budget for the closing costs, which
Right.
include the cost
those
to buy the
yeah.
house, get the loan, and
Right.
then also inspecting
All
the home.
those inspections, right? And I was mentioning, if you have a chimney, you got to get a chimney inspection. You have a pool, you got to get a pool inspection. If you're in Baltimore City, I would strongly suggest, and it's not just Baltimore City, but Baltimore City has kind of an aging infrastructure. Get a sewer line scope
not a bad
inspection,
idea.
and that's about $200. If you have a rural property and you have well and septic, then that's about $1,000 for the well yield and well water quality testing and the septic examination. So anyway, so it can be $1,000, could be $2,000, depending on all the elements of the
Interesting.
home.
So
that
the
you
bigger
want.
a home, and in rural, you might have more costs associated with the inspections. But when it comes to closing costs, I always tell people, the higher the sales price, the lower the percentage of the
Right.
sales price the closing
Because
costs
of the
are.
fixed
If
costs.
somebody's buying a $700,000 home, it might be 3.25%,
Right.
of the sales price, because many of the closing costs that I mentioned earlier are fixed,
Right.
and only a few are based on the
On the
loan
purchase
amount
price,
and the
right.
purchase price.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, great. All right. Number 9.
This really happens.
Skipping the walkthrough.
People
the
do
final walkthrough. Yeah, absolutely. And it's an important
Is it because they don't
step.
have time, or
Maybe, but
it takes usually an hour or so, and you're just making
indefensible,
sure,
right? We're just going. Yeah. Here's the thing: you schedule a final walkthrough before you take ownership of this property, and the reason why you're doing that is because usually a month or so has gone by since you wrote that offer, and anything can happen in that period of time. And you want to make sure that that property is in the same
That's
condition.
a good point that I hadn't thought about. I was more thinking about it from the aspect of repairs that were requested, and you want to make sure that they had been
Well, that's
done.
the other aspect. So it's making sure that the property's in the same condition, because things can go wrong in a property. But it's also, if there were repairs made, you want to have an opportunity to examine those repairs and make sure they were done correctly. I had a walkthrough yesterday. The home inspection revealed certain things that we asked for in repairs.
And they weren't
The
done.
seller made the repairs according to the seller, and we got into the property, and they weren't done correctly. So we had to have, luckily, that seller had his people available, and
Went
they
in
were
right
able
away
to come in
correctly,
and make those fixes right away and got it resolved.
Well, not only that, there was, I can't remember when it was, but there was a spring not too long ago. I'm leaning in so you can hear me. That was incredibly rainy.
Yeah.
And I can remember having instances when there was nothing wrong with the house when they went under contract, but all of a sudden there's water in the basement.
Happens a lot.
It does happen. Well,
Yeah.
when there's as a lender, when a natural disaster happens, before we close on a home, and I'm talking about a hurricane or any areas that are affected, anytime it's deemed that way,
Yeah.
it will always require a reinspection by the appraiser prior to closing to make sure there wasn't wind damage, there wasn't rain damage, things like that.
Sure. Well, I always say it's a great time to see the property when it's pouring down rain, or if it happens during your home inspection, even better.
Showing, because springtime and fall tend to be good times to look at homes.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get the sense of how well the air conditioner works on the top floor.
It's very true.
Or the heat works in the cold of winter.
That's very true. You can't test the air conditioning when it's below 60 degrees outside.
Right.
Yeah, so you have an issue. Yeah. You got to look at that. I mean, that's when you have a home inspection and they look at the general condition of that unit. And as long as it's in good,
Well, there just
well-maintained
are some homes
condition.
that are older made and they're poorly insulated, and maybe you can
Like a
put some
Cape
in
Cod where you walk in and it's almost always boiling up top.
up top. Right,
Yeah.
right. Because they were built that way, and they didn't put in and it's hard. There's certain things you can do, but it is
Right.
sometimes hard.
Right.
There's only so much R factor you can put in the attic. Right?
Very
I know
true.
that. I actually worked in insulation one summer.
Did you?
Oh, it was a hot summer.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah. All right. Well, so anyway, don't skip the final walkthrough. All right. Item number 10, just about keeping the emotions in check. Don't make emotional decisions.
On both sides. Don't
Yeah.
be so overly excited about buying a house, and then don't be so pessimistic that
Right.
everything's going wrong.
Right.
We're doomed to failure.
Right.
I've seen there are some buyers out there that will get so one littlest thing goes wrong and they think it's the end of the world.
Well, it's true. And then on the other side of that, since you mentioned both sides,
Yeah.
the rose-colored glasses,
Oh, yeah.
everything, you're super excited. Maybe it's a first-time buyer and they haven't been through this process before, and so they're really excited about this whole process, and they see this home and they think they love it, and well, there can be things that go wrong. Or you may think, oh, we walk into this house, and this is big in this market. We walk into this house, oh, this is the one. This is the one. This is the house we have to have. Guess what? If it's your one,
Somebody else's
pretty
one.
good chance it's somebody else's one as well.
Right.
What that means is you're going to be competing. You may or may not win. Right? And it's never a given. So, yeah, try not to make emotional decisions. Realize that it's a home. It's going to become a very emotional thing for you over time, but try to take the emotions out of it. Yes, you're going to live there. You're going to love there. You're going to, maybe raise a family there, have your friends over, entertain. You'll build a lifetime of memories. But when you're buying, you got to take the emotions out of the process as much as possible.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to put a bonus.
Turn it up to
Bonus.
11.
We're going to turn it up to 11. A bonus point, number 11.
I like this one because this is a big deal for me.
It's huge. All right. Don't do anything to change your financial picture, right?
Yes.
Buying big items like furniture is one of the biggest things we see happen all the time. People will think,
they know they're going to close on a
house.
home. They go to Bob's. Bob's offering 0% financing for 24 months.
Yep.
And they
Absolutely.
buy that prior to closing.
Right. And they don't realize that, that then becomes a hit on your credit. You've created a new liability.
So here's the deal, folks. We pull your credit at the beginning of it. And generally speaking, your credit report is good for 120 days. In most cases, the initial pull, if I didn't have to do any credit repair or anything like that, is good enough to get you to the closing table. However, during the underwriting process, our underwriters have access to things called this website called Data Verify, where they can check up and see if any credit inquiries have been made on your credit report. We're not doing a hard credit pull, but that they'll ask questions. And yeah, you could lie, but it is a federal crime to lie on a mortgage application.
Right.
They do ask you the question. You sign a thing about applying for new credit during the process, so you want to be honest and upfront.
Our buddy Tom always says, this just says that you haven't gone out and bought a boat or quit your job or done any other things.
Has anything changed?
Yep.
You do not want to lie on that because there's people who've gone to prison for lying on a mortgage application.
It's mortgage fraud.
Yeah. Now, I have had the instance where somebody was doing, I think this was a refinance, not a purchase, and I can remember the desperation because I told them once they signed everything, now don't do anything until this loan closes. Don't open any new accounts. Try to avoid that. They called me in a desperate situation. My car died. I need a car to go to work.
Right.
I can't share a car. It's going to take 30 days to close this loan. It was soon after application. What do I do? And I said, relax, give me a few minutes. I think there's some wiggle room in your debt-to-income ratio. And I calculated, I said, all right, if you go out and you spend this, you can buy it, as long as your monthly payment's below this, you'll still be okay. When you buy it, I will need the paperwork. I'll need the closing document, the terms, and what the monthly payment is.
Right.
And we'll have to include that in your debt ratio. So those things come up, and if you have to do something, that's fine. Now, that's opening new accounts.
As long as you run it by your lender first.
A lot of people get over it. When I give them this advice, they also take it the wrong way when it comes to using their credit cards. If they have credit cards that have available balances on it, we're not pulling it. It's okay to charge a few things on your credit cards to get ready for the house. If you go out on a weekend and you're going to paint the house once you can move into it and you see a paint sale, I wouldn't have a problem with you putting a few $100s on it or buying a couple small things for the house, put it in your credit cards. We're not going to pull your credit and change your credit score for that. So it goes both ways.
Yeah,
but
you can still put gas in your car. You can still
do
go
all
have
those.
it.
In fact, if you want to conserve your cash for a bit, because there are going to be some out-of-pocket expenses like moving.
Sure.
If you're not going to do it yourself, you're hiring a moving company. And you want to delay. I'm a big fan of credit cards, using them and then paying them off every month. But when you charge something at the beginning of the cycle, you have 45 days of interest free, right? Before you have to make that bill. It takes 20 days to 30 days for the cycle to end, and then another 15 or 20 before you have to make
the payment. Right.
So you can use that stuff wisely. But, buying furniture for the house prior to closing, by opening a new account, buying new cars, things like that, those are important on the credit side.
Yeah.
Now, the other side is people sometimes, this has happened, it doesn't happen often, an incredible job offer comes their way.
Right.
While they're under contract to buy a home.
Yeah.
They were thinking about, maybe we're getting their toes wet, but all of a sudden they've got a job opportunity has come their way. It's going to mean a significant increase in their income. If that is the case, an offer letter, and if it's based on a salary, we're okay. But if you're switching jobs from 100% salaried to a small salaried and a job that's going to have incredible commissions, but you've never had a history of earning commissions in the past, that's going to be a problem, be a no-no. You might have to try and, if you could put off that potential employer till after you close,
right,
that would work. But that could the change in the type of income that you're going to get can be an issue.
Yeah.
And if I've had trouble using offer letters for people who are hourlied as opposed to salary. Salary, you can use offer letters. Somebody who's got a variable hours probably won't be able to use that income.
Yeah.
So,
what about if they're changing careers? Right,
as
going
long as
from
they
one thing that they did.
So it is an important thing in underwriting to have the same type of job.
Yeah.
There's one of the questions on it is, how long have you been in this industry?
Mm-hmm.
If you are changing, as long as that's a salary, if it's a fixed salary, changing careers, you could use that moving forward with an offer letter, especially if you start that job prior to closing. There's different rules, different guidelines as to how far after closing you can get your first paycheck, and there may be some post-closing work that has to be done if you were to do that, meaning obtaining a post-closing pay stub from you in order for us to be able to sell the loan to the agencies, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, things like that. You may need something like that. So
okay,
but it doesn't happen often. I think the important thing to know, changing banks, you said it here. That's okay too. But then that just realize it's going to be more
another paper
paperwork.
trail. Another paper trail.
Just have to have a paper trail.
Just think status quo.
If you can.
Yeah.
But if things have to change, or there's an opportunity that you feel you must pursue,
talk to your lender.
Don't do it. I remember this was a refinance. Getting a loan to closing, the day of closing, one of the things everybody does is within 10 days of closing, you got to do a verification of employment. And often, back in those days, and even these days, often at times, it's a call to your employer to make sure you're still working. Right? I had somebody call and verify employment. The closer was doing it for the lender I was working at the time, and she called me and said, "We have a problem." Yes, she still works there, but the person who replied said she was at her retirement party.
Whoops.
Never mention it to me.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was able to salvage that and still do the refinance because she was retiring. We had retirement income, and she applied for Social Security, and we got the Social Security, those things. It delayed closing a little bit. You were able to do it. But that's something you need. If you're retiring,
just be honest. Talk to your lender up front.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that was a good 11 bonus point.
It was. Okay, so Michael, when we come back, we're going to focus on the unreal and the spotlight. Cool. So we'll be back in just a second.
Try it.
And we're back to Be Real, the Maryland Real Estate Podcast. I'm Brad Cox with the Vesta Group of Long & Foster, and I'm joined by the perspicacious.
Jeez. This has been a syllabus today.
Yeah.
Not a syllabus, a thesaurus.
Yeah, right.
I misused that word. Define that word. Say it one more time.
Perspicacious. Yeah, right. What do you think it means?
I have no idea.
Well, it's a good one. Having a ready insight into an understanding of things. How about that?
How about that?
Complimentary, every single one of them.
I didn't think you were putting it down.
Well, it is April Fool's Day. All right. Anyway. The perspicacious who?
Michael Becker of Sierra Pacific Mortgage. And I'm going to say to you,
Yes.
if I don't get a chance to introduce you because this is the last segment, but the sesquipedalian Brad Cox.
Yeah, oh my gosh. All right. Well, Michael,
Yes, sir.
let's jump
Time
right
for the
in-
unreal.
Jump right into the unreal.
All right, this is kind of unreal just because it surprised me when I saw it, and you did too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's kind of funny. We were psychically linked during this week, but yeah. So here's the story. In 2002, baby boomers replaced millennials as the largest generation of home buyers. As home buyers had boomers had a 39% share of home purchases, while millennials had 28%.
That's I would have never guessed that was the case.
Massive switch from 2021. Millennials led boomers then 43 to 28%. So huge turnaround there. Now, according to Jessica Lautz, who is the NAR's National Association of Realtors deputy chief economist.
Who is it? Why are we talking to her as the deputy? Why are we not?
Why are we
getting
not
to
talking to Lawrence Yun?
Yun?
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy, but Jessica happened to comment. She said it resulted from two main factors: older buyers having equity in their homes
Makes
that help
sense.
them buy the next property, and then number two, many young first-time home buyers dealing with affordability issues. I mean, you think about it if you're competing with somebody who owns a home already, has built up equity over the course of
They are
10
undeterred by higher interest rates because they're sitting on so much equity, have a large down payment to put into the new home.
Right.
If lifestyle issues matter, great deal. Baby boomers are post-retirement because we're Gen X.
Right.
And we're the first year of Gen X, I think, aren't we? Is baby boomers are 46 to 64, so 65 would be the first year of Gen Xers. So the majority of baby boomers are in retirement age.
Right.
I would imagine very few of them aren't empty nesters.
Right.
Another reason to downsize. You might not have to be moving to a retirement area.
Right.
But
Lots of times they have much more equity in their home than the size of the home that they're buying, the price of the home that they're
after the last
buying.
few years of home appreciation, especially.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting that it is home buyers, but if this trend continues, well, it's going to be. I don't know if it continues.
Well, in a way, it's a good thing because if
We'd
you
like
think
to see
about
them
the
sell their
boomers-
homes.
Yes, sell, boomers. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I don't want to say that. Okay, boomer, sell your house.
No. But and then the other side is young time home. So in 21, a lot of millennials, they were delayed, it seemed, because of the great financial crisis entering the housing market.
Yeah. And then just some other
Booming
just
economy
general-
post-COVID.
Yeah.
Good salaries that being earned by super low rates that the Fed probably kept too low too long.
Right.
Had them enter. Good for those who bought a home then and
Yeah.
are sitting on a good interest rate.
Right.
A lot of people last year, because of affordability, decided, well, some of them waited it out for lower rates, which isn't a bad thing. But the second part, people waiting for prices to drop.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
not a good strategy.
That's not going to work.
If you're looking to buy a home now, we always say if you can afford it based on the rates, go ahead and do it. You can always refinance and lower the payment in the future.
Hopefully.
Rents are only going to go up, although I do think this year we're going to probably see either flattening or even maybe a pullback a little bit in rents.
And we are seeing that in some areas, not
Some
so
areas,
much out here.
but
yet,
over the long term, rents continually go up.
in general, yes.
You don't pay more for a house that you've already bought, do you?
Usually not.
Like the government doesn't keep, except for property taxes, they do charge you that, but you don't have to. Like if the house is if you bought it for $400 and it's worth $500, you don't have to give somebody the extra $100 for the increase in value.
Right.
No. So that is a bit unreal. We'd like to see millennials. There's still plenty that all surveys that we've seen and we've talked about show that they do see the value in home ownership.
Yeah.
They are a little bit cautious because of these rates. It's understandable. We mentioned one of the mistakes people make is being rushed into home ownership.
Sure.
Think about it. Make sure look at rents. Look at where values are. See if there's a way that you can afford home ownership. It is something that does increase wealth in the United States.
Right. And if you're a millennial and maybe you haven't gone down the path of marriage or any kind of long-term relationship with someone else, there are some other things that you could consider doing, like maybe getting a roommate.
It's a great idea. My middle son is probably going to buy a house and have roommate. He's not going to do it just yet. He's just finishing his
young
master's
buddy
degree.
Nick, that's what he did.
Yeah.
Right. When he bought his home, he bought down in Canton, and he bought a home larger than what he really needed, but with the idea that he was going to have a couple of roommates in there.
Now, you've got to qualify. You can't qualify. This is a topic for another show. I don't want to get into it, but there is a way to. There's certain loan programs that do allow border income, but it's somebody that has to have been living with you and paying rent for a period for you to use that to qualify. In most cases, you're going to have to qualify for the payment on your own. But if you do, and you're just somebody who's cautious on your budget.
Yeah, you can afford it technically, but you don't want to spend that much.
You don't want to be house poor, what we call.
Or, eating ramen noodles every night.
Every day just to get a house.
Right. But you can bring that roommate in.
Bring a roommate in, have them help pay for your mortgage, and you can maintain the lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah. And then think about things, like we talked about earlier. Just look for those properties maybe that are the diamond in the rough. You may spend a little bit less for that, and understand that you're going to live with that property being like it is for maybe a little while. But then over time, you can start hacking away at some improvements and increase the value of the home.
Either that or even the rehab loan. You could purchase the house as is, do a rehab down the road as a refi if rates drop, and it becomes a little bit more affordable.
Sure.
Rehab loan rates are higher than regular conventional rates, but it may make sense. A friend of ours, somebody we network with, I'm going to only use first names.
Yeah.
Ryan did a rehab. I didn't do the purchase, but I did the refi. Mm-hmm. And him buying a house and doing a rehab loan when he bought it gave him so much equity in the house just a few years after. You talked about, worrying about not paying attention to the home equity if you have to sell down the road.
Right.
Oftentimes, the increase in value can be greater than what it costs you to buy and rehab the home, especially a few years after purchase.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to get some equity in a house, looking for that diamond in the rough and potentially doing a rehab loan. You do have to compete against flippers because people are out there looking to make money. But if you're willing to if you're going to do a rehab loan and offer the seller a little bit more money than the flipper is, because they got to have a profit in it.
That's the thing. You can typically offer a little bit more than they will.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Right.
So there are ways. It's not, it was surprising when I initially read it, but when you look into the reasons behind it, it does kind of make sense. But let's see if we can, speaking of flippers, flip this, have a few more millennials. We'd like to see, typically first-time home buyers are 40% of the market. And I do think that number has also dropped because I would say that the 39% of baby boomers who bought in 2022 were probably not first-time home buyers.
No. Typically not.
No.
Yeah. So. Yeah. All right. Well, that was the unreal. Let's flip over since we're in this flipping topic. We'll flip over.
An oldie but a goodie.
To the spotlight. Yeah. A Baltimore institution. It's this. All right. We're talking about Tio Pepe.
Yes.
This restaurant is almost as old as we are. Mm-hmm. That's saying something now.
Yeah, it is.
55 years old. 55 years old. Tio Pepe has been around. Spanish restaurant. They're at 10 East Franklin Street in Baltimore. Our family's gone there forever. It's not something that we go to every week, obviously, kind of a special occasion place. But and it's almost like, if you've never been in there, it's like you're walking into some kind of cave or cavern or grotto. It's dimly lit, and
it is kind of cave-ish.
It is.
Sometimes the table's a little smaller. If you're used to having lots of elbow room, it might not be that way.
Yeah, but I'm telling you,
it is.
They do so many things right. I love what Baltimore Magazine had to say about them. They did a review of them in the Baltimore's Best Restaurant issue. Mm-hmm. They said, Tio Pepe, Depression-era prices and Brobdingnagian portions. I just love that phrase.
That is good.
It's a good English major phrase for me because that was from the Brobdingnagians from Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels.
I got that illusion. Not
Yes.
everybody will, but
Yeah,
thank you for explaining it.
18th century British lit. A little bit of a weird focus for me, but that was my big thing in college. So,
Well, the food, I mean, and they still serve the same. If I go there, and I love their sangria,
oh man,
but I'm an enophile and I might have that to start and then move to a bottle of wine because I love the garlic shrimp and the Dover sole.
that garlic shrimp, dude, in the beginning, that appetizer, I love it. Absolutely.
And you and I are trying to stay away from carbs, but how could you not dip bread into that garlic sauce?
Well,
You might have to.
it's going to be hard for me. It's going to be hard for me. Yeah. Wow.
And the beef
paella,
tornadoes I love.
yeah, their paella.
Paella is good.
That's a dish to
You
get
wrote
for
down
two.
something. First of all, I've known Tio Pepe's has been a top restaurant in Baltimore. I worked in the Mount Vernon area restaurant scene, which is kind of close to where Tio Pepe's is. It's Brass Elephant in the late 80s. Back then, there were three. The top three were perennial top three.
Yeah.
Prime Rib, Tio Pepe's, and the
Brass
Brass
Elephant,
Elephant when I worked there. So the fact that they're still doing it at such a high level so many years
It's
later.
just that's the thing. They're consistently fantastic. Yeah.
So
All right.
you have something here. I don't understand this.
So they've got some things that you can order that aren't really on the menu.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you like shellfish, I'm just gonna say, order the 303.
What's that?
I don't know. Do I spill the beans?
Well,
or
is that
do
like
I...
a secret? Because I Googled it and nobody's saying.
Right. Yeah. All right.
All right, well, order the 303.
Order the 303. Try
like
it.
that.
Yeah. All right. If you haven't been, give them a try. Now, look, they don't have a big Instagram presence. This is an old-time restaurant, right? They've been around forever. But you can look at them on Instagram if you want. I think they've posted maybe 3 things over the course of their Instagram. They're at restaurante_Tio_Pepe. Or just search the words Tio Pepe and you'll find it.
They have a website with a menu and a wine list.
They do, and that's at tiopepe.us.
They're exactly right.
Yes, TIOPEPE.us. Or you can call them 410-539-4675. But just amazing food and such a great atmosphere. So check them out if you get a chance. That's Tio Pepe.
I'm going to have to go. It's been a while.
It has been, yeah. All right, so maybe that's something we can visit together. All right.
That would
Well,
be fun.
Michael, episode 12 in the books. Thank you.
An even dozen, baby.
Yeah.
Going for the Baker's Dozen next week.
Baker's Dozen next week.
Which is about?
So we talked about the buyer mistakes this week. We're going to talk about home selling mistakes next week.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So
Look
folks.
forward to it.
Yeah. Michael.
Yes, sir.
Somebody needs to reach out to you to get in touch about mortgages and thus.
Call me. Just call me. No,
Yeah.
give me a ring. 443-310-0012. Text me as well. I love getting texts. You can say you heard me on the podcast, and I'll make sure I get right back to you. They can also email me at michael.becker@spmc.com.
Great. And if you need to reach me, my cell, 410-375-7550. And my email is brad@homesbyvesta.com. And if you need to reach the show, you can email us at hello@berealpod.com. You can also listen to the episodes on berealpod.com, or you can check us out on any of the major podcast platforms. So looking forward to our next week's episode, Michael. Folks, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Take care.
Try it.